there's another subject I'd love to touch on from the Jewish perspective with Rabbi Pinson. You talked in one of your videos about male souls in female bodies,
Yeah.
and female souls in male bodies. And I start thinking, wow, okay, what's that about in this age of trans this, trans that? Where's this all coming from all of a sudden in America? What is this about?
Okay, so let's really separate two different things. There is this spiritual idea that it's possible. We're not talking about millions of people, but it's possible that sometimes in different incarnations that male structured souls, which means the soul that is forgiving and for procreating, etc., will be possibly enter into a female body, and a female body will have a male soul, or a male soul will have a female body. But this is not part of the same conversation about people with identity crisis and things like that. There's two separate things. It's possible. Let's just say like this. Let's say out of 100 people, I don't want to give the statistic, but let's say out of 100 people, I would say certain people really have a soul identity crisis, which means that they do have. It could be possibly a male that has a female soul, and it doesn't mean the person has to transition. That's not what I'm saying. It just means that the person has a more feminine soul. And I
You could
think
be a man who's soft and
that's
kind.
that's exactly correct.
Doesn't mean you have to become a woman.
Correct. That's the mistake. In other words, just
That's the
because a person,
mistake.
that's exactly the mistake. In other words, just because a person has a feminine soul does not mean they have to have a feminine body. It means that the person is a softer, kinder, or whatever femininity comes with. That's that person's soul. I think we have a certain stigma of what a male is supposed to look like in a female.
Exactly. So men hide their
Correct.
kindness, and
Right.
it
And if
comes out in meanness sometimes.
correct. And it comes out in the inverse way. So I think that is really the conversation. Now, why are we struggling? Why, as a society, we're struggling so much? I think it's a culture virus. There is such a phenomenon. It's actually a physical phenomenon that just like there's physical viruses, there's culture viruses. Once
Cultural,
something once
cultural viruses.
it's a culture virus, which means once something becomes accepted or something becomes a possibility of a certain way of behavior, it actually is contagious to other young children. You see this with God forbid with suicide. Every time there's a suicide tick with children, with adolescents especially and teenagers, it's across the culture, across the country, across the world. There's a higher levels of suicide, and every time there's a downtick, it's also automatically all throughout the world it goes down. There's something about when certain kids or certain people are doing certain behaviors, people catch this culture virus and think that's the thing to do. Obviously, this is a tremendous crisis. It goes back to, if you want to go spiritually, but the real roots of this whole idea,
Yes.
the real root of the idea is the identity crisis. Really, its roots goes back to the theory of relativity, because once science, Einstein and others developed the theory of relativity on a scientific level, it eventually translated itself into the world of literature, which is deconstructionist literature, and Derrida and all the French philosophers as well, and then eventually went into psychology, and now it's becoming into anatomy, which is everything's relative and everything's relative. Like if there's no absolute truths, then if I can't say about any truth about an atom, if it's a wave or a particle, then I can't say a truth whether I'm a boy or a girl or a man or a woman.
Right. So, okay. It comes down to what is true, what is not true.
Exactly. So we're suffering from a spiritual crisis, which is that we lost the thread of absoluteness, of saying that this is the truth and we don't bend. When someone does something kind, that's a true act. Not only a kind act, it's a true act. And we have to uphold the truth. And truth is absolute. And that's not truth is not a relative truth. It's not my truth and your truth and another truth. There is the truth, and there's a larger truth. And the moment we lost a connection with the truth, everything just fell apart. Everything just fell apart, and the society just fell apart. And it will, again, going back to the same conversation we talked before, there is a crisis. There is definitely a chaos, but I think it will refine itself into a higher perception and a higher allowance to reconnect to the truth.